Morning, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
What makes you feel old? David says, I know I must be getting old when I fill in online forms and I need a rest as I scroll down the year of birth from 2020 right down to 1952. I know exactly how you feel. It takes forever, doesn't it? You think, maybe my date of birth won't be there.
Sue Dunthorne is, I hate to say it, Sue, but you must be old. Because she's tweeted me to say, where was I yesterday? It was her birthday and I needed eye candy. If you think I'm...
Oh, you mean, where were you yesterday?
Yeah, where was I yesterday? Yeah. So I'm afraid, Sue, if you think I'm eye candy, then I'm afraid it's probably giving your age
a little bit. Isn't it? And Linda says, what makes me feel old is when I'm out and about and I say to someone, I need to spend a penny, and nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I need to spend 6p something, I don't know.
Well, now it's about £3.50.
It probably is. Yes, it is.
Pay by card if you're running to the toilet.
Inflation for you.
Let's have a look at the newspapers. And in the Times this morning, Conservative leadership candidates Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have exchanged blows over tax, as polls show that there's quite a significant lead for Liz Truss.
Well, yes, the Eye says there's a Stop Truss plot as Penny Mordaunt's supporters orchestrate a revenge campaign.
For the Express this morning, BBC apology over the Panorama smears, saying we let Diana down.
And the Mirror adds that the police should now charge the culprits behind the Bashir interview.
Channel migrants who triggered alerts on security databases have been allowed to vanish without fingerprints or pictures being taken, according to the Mail.
And the eldest son of Big Brother star Jade Goody, do you remember her? Well, he's landed a role in EastEnders. He's 19 years old now, Bobby Brazier. He joins the BBC One soap as a mischievous member of the Slater family this autumn.
Slater family? Cat Slater, I've heard of.
But I don't watched EastEnders for many years. But I think it's great if he's, good luck to him.
He's been brought up well.
Yes, that's good.
Now, let's have a look to the papers then with Marianne Hotter and James Bloodworth. Good to see you both again this morning. Marianne, to the Mail.
Yeah, so it's a slightly misleading headline, I think, about migrants landing in Britain with guns. The actual story is about the Home Office is really bad at doing its job. This is a report written by David Neal, who is the Chief Borders Inspector. So that's an independent watchdog that's brought in by government to basically determine whether the Home Office, headed up by Priti Patel, is doing its job. And it's a damning report. He actually submitted his report back in February.
5 months ago, yeah.
And
it's been sat
Home
on.
Office, they sat on it and published it the day that Parliament went on their summer holiday, basically. He's been in role for a year and Priti Patel has not yet made an appointment to meet him. He is the inspector for her department. So this sort of demonstrates actually what's possibly happening behind those kind of tough talking words that she comes out with about dealing with immigration, being, she's kind of got all that fire around the Rwanda.
By all accounts, she's had a terrible time with the border force as well, then. People won't see her point of view or won't get on with what she tells them to do, which is why she's then accused of bullying. It's maybe not as black and white as all that.
Well, I don't think bullying is ever an excuse for not getting your team on side.
No, but it appears there's been a bit of a war of words.
But when she's been in role for this long, and this is her department, if there were other cabinet ministers who kind of headed up this kind of disastrous delivery and performance, it's branded as poor. I mean, normally these reports are kind of choose their words quite carefully. They don't really go in for the kill, but this is terrible. And it's things like, for example, like the headline says, that detainees who came in, they're kind of logged and processed, and they're supposed to have their fingerprints taken.
Well, exactly.
They're supposed to have their faces taken. They're supposed to have hand over their documents so that they can be determined who they are, and then that process of working out whether they have a refugee asylum claim that needs to be processed in one particular way, whether there are other police forces perhaps elsewhere in Europe who need to know about these people, whether they are named on the list.
Officials, deputies and ministers have been meeting with the head of border force, and she shouldn't have to meet everybody personally, does she?
This is the chief inspector of the whole department. This is the most senior person who assesses the integrity of your work. It would be absolutely normal and correct for the head of the department to meet that chief
It is
inspector.
odd, isn't it?
It's very odd, and I think it has to raise questions. Priti Patel seems to have this kind of Teflon coating, that criticism like this, like evidence-based criticism, not just we don't like her, but genuinely based on the performance of the department. Lots of people, particularly GBNEWS, I find, care a lot about immigration,
Yes,
care a lot about the protection and the
And there's no
defence
doubt
of
that, I mean, you
borders.
say the Daily
And
Mail
this is terrible.
story
It's
is
systemic
misleading,
failure.
but the fact is that there have been boats that have arrived with migrants with guns.
And
There
Priti Patel,
and several of them have later turned up on the police database as very suspicious characters
And-
should have been known about
Yeah,
and yet have disappeared.
well, and that Priti Patel's department has not done anything about it. Now, there is a final bit. The spokesperson says that briefly.
Just briefly.
The spokesperson says, "Oh yeah, we're dealing with all this." But I think we need to really see the evidence, and we need a proper response because we need those answers.
Maybe we shall get one. You never know. James, let's have a look at the times, should we? And causing offence. Oh, people like to be offended these days.
They do, and but police officers have been told that they should no longer investigate people complaining about online spats complaining that they've been offended, because it shows that 120,000 people in the past 5 years, incidents have been recorded by police even though behaviour did not meet a criminal threshold. I think this is kind of a common sense move. I mean, as you say, people like to feel offended, and offence is so subjective. So saying I'm offended, I mean, a lot of the time the only reasonable response is kind of so what. And I think this is especially important considering there's another report on page 2 of the Times, which is criminals, only 5% of alleged crimes to a person are being charged a year later. So, things like burglaries, sexual offences are not being followed up on properly. And perhaps part of that's because the police have been wasting so much time following up complaints about people being rude on Twitter.
Well, there's been no doubt pressure on them to do so, but they've got.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to prioritise, and guess if a Twitter spat, as horrible as they can be actually at times. No, you're not talking criminal offence.
Yeah, I mean, there are
Well, in some
things that-
cases you might be. I suppose.
Well, if it's
harassment. I mean, there are things that are illegal in offline. So things like harassment or incitement of violence, for example. But those things are already crimes. It's this idea that at the moment you've had people who've the police have to investigate every incident where someone perceives hostility on the basis of race, religion, disability. And even if there's no one's charged with anything, those records can still show up on someone's DBS check. So you could effectively be rejected for a job based on someone's malicious complaint about you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh well, it's a statement of the obvious in a way. Marianne, badges.
Yeah, are you ready?
Go on,
I
badges
find
do it.
this kind of a charming and strange story. Lady called Anne Mathers, who lives in Dudley in West Midlands,
Yeah.
has a garden, lovely flower beds, all the rest of it. She keeps getting badgers, what she describes as fly tipping human remains on her lawn, because they go into the cemetery next door, dig up skulls, and then plonk them in her flower beds around the
Oh
grass.
my
And she's
goodness,
like, what do I do
we're
now?
even seeing a picture of
Yeah,
a skull in her
someone's skull.
lettuce.
So she
Front
says
page.
it's been going on for a year, and there's nothing that they can do about it for now because the badgers are breeding and they're protected wildlife. So Anne just has to collect up the bits of bones and
That's
leave them
terrible.
carefully, and then it's not a kind of a health risk or anything. They're dry bones, but it isn't.
No, but it's-
Odd.
I mean, presumably it must be. I mean,
a bit
look at the
amusing.
states of them in that picture. They're old.
Yeah, and so when she first found a human skull in her garden, she called the police.
I'll
She
bet.
thought maybe this was a murder victim that they'd discovered, the badgers had discovered. But now it turns out that, fortunately, it's not a murder victim. But obviously potentially distressing for people if they think
Well,
that their loved
exactly.
ones are getting dug up by badgers.
I just sort of.
It's the process of nature.
Well, that's what I think. It's a process of nature. You get buried and you are returned to the earth, and that means.
Yeah, but you end up in her garden.
Yeah, but animals, are, you're going to get, eaten and
Yeah.
all the rest of it, and that's.
I want to be
amazing.
buried because of that. I don't want to be cremated. I find that a bit odd, but getting buried and eaten by the worms, I'm well up for
And then
that.
dug up again by badgers.
Well, I'm an archaeologist, so I
that's
don't mind
true,
getting dug
yeah.
up again and
No.
examined.
I don't mind that as a story. I think that's.
It's
quite
kind of
nice
funny and
in a
weird,
way.
isn't it? So sorry, Anne, but
Yeah.
That would freak me out, getting up in the morning, going out to the garden and seeing a skull there.
yeah.
Makes gardening a bit more interesting, doesn't it? Now, Kylie Jenner, she's caused a bit of controversy by hopping on a plane.
Yeah, 17-minute flight on a private jet.
I mean, why would you?
I think it's. There's other examples of other celebrities. So Floyd Mayweather Jr. went on a 10-minute private jet flight from Henderson, Nevada to Las Vegas, and there's other celebrities as well. And I think it's infuriating because, I mean, lots of us are concerned about the environment and climate change, and many people who don't have many who aren't multi-millionaires, billionaires, are making a big effort to do what they can to do their bit. And then you see many of these celebrities, many of whom themselves have kind of virtue signaled online about climate change, etc., and then just taking the mickey by causing this needless pollution themselves.
How far did
these
she travel
private
in
jets.
17 minutes, does it say? Can't be very far.
It says it would have taken 40 minutes in a car.
40 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, right, so it's less, so just
far.
over half the journey time.
Yeah, exactly. But it would have emitted about a ton of carbon dioxide, which is about a quarter of the average global person's emissions in a year. 17 minutes, it says.
Yeah, it's just not on. Really.
It's disgusting.
It's just more money than sense, that one.
Yes, it
I'm afraid
is.
to
There are a
say.
lot of those about, aren't there?
Mary Ann, James, thank you. We shall catch up with you both in the next hour.